Are we filming? Today we're going to do a setup on this Fender Stratocaster. I'll take you through all of the steps, show you what goes into it when you come in and say, hey, I want a setup. We already sighted the neck, we already checked it out for buzzing, checked the electronics. So now we're going to dive right in and take the strings off. And to make this easier on myself, to take them out since these strings are going in the trash anyway, I'm just going to snip them, loop them up, and throw them in the trash. Am I talking too fast? Hi, Chris.
Oh, hey, how you doing?
The strings are off. Now I'm going to remove the pick guard so I can access the electronics and spray it out with deoxit, which will clear away any corrosion that is building up or has built up. Corrosion causes a staticky, crackly noise when you adjust the knobs. Not very desirable. All right, now I'm just going to spray out the little access point in the pot there. Give them a little twist.
Convenient locations for snacks.
She bad.
She can use a drill. We're gonna restring it. No, we're gonna clean it. Typically, if there's corrosion on the frets, if there are gunky finger cheese on it, we're gonna clean that all off, get it nice and spick and span. The guitar's gonna feel better if it's not gunked up. When the strings are on it and it's up to full tension, it pulls the bridge up, so we're gonna add an extra spring in the back. Take the back plate off. Adding a spring. We're gonna move this guy over and add our new one here. Tighten it up again. Light surgery, simple surgery. Sometimes we do some major surgeries, but a setup is the most basic thing that we can really do aside from just a restring. Common procedure. Restringing, so strings are color coded. It varies from manufacturer to manufacturer, but gold is your low E, red is your A, then black, then green, then purple, then silver. Sometimes with these floating bridges and the back plates, you'll need to take the back plate off in order to restring it, but with this one it's got this window here. The back of the bridge is clear and within view. You just go in these little holes in the back, and then they come up through the hole in the front. If it's not a top-loaded bridge, sometimes the bridges have holes in the back and you thread them through and up and over the saddles. Putting the string through the body will give you more sustain, typically. Variations. So now the strings are through, we're going to cut them down to size. I typically use the tuning pegs to measure the amount of distance that I need. You don't want too many wraps on particularly your heavy wound strings, and you don't want too few wraps on your high unwound strings. So for the bass strings, I'll measure down 2 tuning pegs, bend and cut, and I bend it because every now and then you run the chance of the wound strings coming unwound if you don't bend it. It's not a necessity, but something that I'm in the practice of doing. And with the A string, sometimes I'll leave a little more room on the string to get more wraps in, so it's farther down, especially with this swooping action on the headstock here. You want the strings to be headed up into the nut in a good angle. You don't want it to be too shallow. You want a strong connection there. String winder. And I'll put it in, and then I'll wrap it around as many times as I can before even going to the string winder. And as I wrap, I make sure that it's underneath the previous wrap, but over top of the tail that hangs down. And you don't want to clip this tail too long because as you're winding, it'll push downward and you'll get a big nasty ring in the finish. It'll cause a scratch. The pressure on that little tail also helps it lock in, so you're not going to get any string slippage. Tips and tricks. There's more than one way to restring a guitar. Another thing that I didn't mention that this guitar doesn't need is tightening hardware. If we notice any hardware is loose, like these nuts on the tuning pegs, we'll tighten those up for you as well as part of the setup. As I wrap, you'll notice that all of the wraps are going the same direction. They're all going this way. So nothing is coming around the backside. It's all uniform. And the treble strings go under this string tree here. Sometimes your guitar may have another secondary string tree for the G and the D. This one only has one for the B and the A. The purpose of the string tree is to make sure you have a good angle on the string coming into the nut. These tuning pegs are so far back that the angle that the strings are headed into the nut without it is so shallow you wouldn't necessarily get a good connection. A good connection to the nut is really important. This is where the vibration essentially stops. If your connection with the nut is bad, you're going to get some sitaring, which is extra vibrations. Your string could pop out of the nut. Just really important to have that nice angle. Grab our tuner and get it up to pitch. Standard guitar tuning, E standard is E, A, D, G, B, E. If you ever bring your guitar into us and you want it in an alternate tuning, just let us know and we'll set it up for that. And then once it's up to pitch, we're gonna break the strings in a little. Because strings are gonna stretch out over time, this helps make it so that when we give you your guitar back, it's not constantly falling out of tune. Strings need to be broken in. And then tune it again. It's funny, when I tell people I'm a guitar technician, their first question is always, "Oh, you know how to tune a guitar?"
What?
Definitely the most common question. Up to pitch. Next, I'm going to check the neck. So inside of a neck, there's a truss rod, and the access point is typically here unless it's a vintage style truss rod, in which case it's going to be here. This one, the access point for the truss rod is up here, so I'm going to grab an Allen wrench. One of the most common seasonal changes with guitars is needing your truss rod adjusted. It's a good reason to bring your guitar in, get it set up. It's under a whole lot of pressure from these strings. So it can bend this way or it can bend that way. It has a slight curve to it, which means the neck has too much tension in the truss rod. So I'm going to add some relief. You want to adjust it while it's under tension. You won't typically be able to get it correct if you're looking at it without any tension on it, because that's not how your guitar is going to be when you're playing it. There's exceptions to that rule, but that is only for like maintenance work and fret work and things like that.
Listen to Riley.
I was just checking for buzzing. The neck is as it should be. The action on this guitar is incredibly low. Low action is of course desirable, but if your neck is as it should be and it's still buzzing and the action's really low, that means it just has to come up a smidge. The action is the distance between the strings and the frets, or the fretboard, however you want to refer to it. Cut that part out. This particular guitar has tiny little Allen wrenches. As you're playing with the action, these strings are going to go out of tune. You raise the action, you're going to be adding more tension to the strings. So you never want to like raise it a whole lot all at once. Gradually retune it, check for buzzing, do it again. With the exception of classicals and some electrics, most guitar necks have a radius to them, which means they're not perfectly flat. So you don't want this to be perfectly flat. You want it to be as close to the frets as possible. Again, low action is desirable. So action is adjusted, neck is adjusted. Next up, we're going to test the intonation. Intonation is pretty easy to visualize on a guitar because you have a physical representation of the sound wave, which is the string. We're making sure that it's intonated between the 2 points that the string is resting, the nut and the saddle, at the 12th fret. The note at the 12th fret should be the same as the note when it's played open. So the E is sharp. That means we need to increase the length of the wave, essentially. Make it a little flatter. That's what these screws down here do. Take some tension off of the string, tighten it. And as you pull the saddle back, I detuned it ever so slightly because you're going to be increasing tension on the string. Tune it back. The G is a little flat, so we're going to do the opposite of what we did on the low E, and we're going to move the saddle this way, shorten the length of the vibration. And a little goes a long way. Perfect. and that's where it needs to be. Balance the output. On the pickups, they were a little out of whack. The closer a pickup is to the strings, the louder the sound coming through the amp is going to be. Pickups located closer to the bridge, you're going to get more treble sound, going to be lighter. Pickups closer to the neck, going to be warmer, fuller, bassier. Plugged it into an amp and flipped through the four-way switch, making sure that no position is louder than another position. And it's all adjusted now and ready for a test drive.
I know a guy.
Awesome.
A+.
Another successful setup. Do you like my drawing of a guitar?